Hi everyone, welcome to the Unity Editor Basics series. So we're still talking about the ins and outs of navigating the Unity Editor, and in this tutorial we're going to be talking about the edit option in the menu bar. So the edit option is besides file, which we talked about last time, and this includes options related to editing your scene or your game. So for example, let's make a cube object here. So I already have a cube object. I'm going to make another cube object by right clicking in the hierarchy window and then clicking on 3D object and cube. So here you can see in the scene view, it's created a 3D cube for me. Now up in the edit option, I can undo what we just created. So I can undo this 3D cube object by clicking on undo create cube or Ctrl+Z, which is the keyboard shortcut. And there you go. So I undid the create cube. I can also redo create object by clicking on redo create object option or Ctrl+Y, and then you see that I have my cube object recreated in the scene. Okay. So we can also use keyboard shortcuts for this, like I said. Now we can also duplicate the game cube by clicking on duplicate up here or using Ctrl+D, which is the keyboard shortcut. And here you can see this cube 2, which has been created. Or if I move this, you can see the duplicated cube on the right side. And then we can delete the cube object. So just make sure that it's selected either in the scene view or in your hierarchy view, and then go up to edit and then click on delete. And there you go. So it's deleted the 3D game cube. Okay, so moving on. Now the frame selected command will allow you to focus on a particular game object. So it centers the viewport on the selected game object, and we can either select the game, so we can use like the keyboard shortcut, which is F, and then we can either select it in the hierarchy window or in the scene view and then click on F. And here you can see it centers the viewport on this game object that we selected. And this is super useful if you're trying to find a game object and you have hundreds of game objects in your scene. Okay. Now, the select all command, which has the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+A, is going to select all the game objects in your scene. And here in the hierarchy window, you can see that it selected all my game objects, and I have this light gray background. Okay, so I can select all the game objects, and then out here, if I click on delete, it's going to delete all the selected game objects. Okay, I'm going to undo that by clicking on undo delete game objects, and it's much easier. I mean, with time you can use the keyboard shortcuts. And anyways, okay, so let's move on. Now next we have the find option, and this is used to find a game object. So you can also find game objects by typing in the search bar up here in the hierarchy window. So if I type in cube, it's going to find all the cube objects in my scene. Okay. So let's move on and talk about preferences. Okay, so the preferences option will allow you to edit the preferences of the Unity editor. And when we click on it, you can see this window pops up. So we can customize the colors of our UI elements in the editor by clicking or choosing colors from here in the preferences option. So we can also out here if I click on general, we can choose to auto refresh our game. We can choose to compress assets when we import our game, and so on. So if I go to external tools, I can click on which code editor I want to use. So I'm using Visual Studio Code, but if I wanted to, I could use another code editor. Okay, so I'm going to close this. Now we also have a play, pause, and a step options. So if I click on play, it's going to play the game. So it's going to play the current game, our game. So let me click on game again. And there you go. Okay. So you can see that we are now in our gameplay. And I can, if I click the step option, and the step command is useful because it allows us to see the game frame by frame, and this is super useful for testing the game and debugging it. Okay, so next you see the sign in and sign out options. So I'm already signed in, so which is why it's grayed. And if I click on sign out, it's going to sign me out of my Unity account, which I don't want to do as yet. Okay, so we have the selection command. Now the selection command allows you to save and load collections of game objects. So I can select, let's say I select these two game options, right? So I'm just going to select them, and I'm just going to click on control and control. So I've selected cube and the cube A object, and next if I go up to edit and then I go to selection, I can click on save selection 1. Okay, so it's going to save this collection of two game objects for me, and then we can load the selection by clicking on the load a selection 1 option out here, which is going to automatically load my previously saved selection. Okay, now moving on, we have the project settings option out here. So the project settings option allows us to customize the settings for our Unity editor in regards to the current project that we are working on. So for example, if I click on the input manager, right, we're going to see all these options, which allows us to choose the mapping of keys for jumping, moving around, so moving horizontal, vertical, forward, etc. And then we have the audio option, which allows it's going to allow you to choose the maximum volume of game commands, and so on. Okay, we also have the physics option, which is for 3D games, and it's going to allow you to control the physics settings of the game, such as gravity and the default material, etc. And physics 2D option is for 2D games. Now we have the quality settings, which is for the render graphic settings, shadow settings, etc. And the graphics is going to allow you to customize shaders, resolution qualities, and so on. So a whole bunch of project settings for your current game. Okay. Now moving on, next we have the graphics tier, which is going to allow you to choose options to check out how your scene or game is going to be rendered on a different graphics card. So different graphics cards have different shader models, so we can check how the game is going to be rendered on these graphic cards. And lastly, we have the grid and snap settings here, and the grid and snap settings command will allow you to snap a game object to a grid which is projected along the X, Y, or Z axes, and we will actually talk about a lot of these commands in detail moving on. So we're going to talk about grid and snap in detail in another tutorial. And that's pretty much it for this tutorial. And if you thought this was useful, go ahead and hit like and subscribe.